Whoa.
We're going back.
I love
September.
Wow.
September 25th, 2023, regular school board meeting. Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mr. Grant,
Present.
Mrs. Hagedorn,
Present.
Mr. Carpenter,
Present.
Mr. Leeds,
I just got off the phone with him. He'll be here in 10
And
minutes.
he's-
He had an issue at the farm.
okay, and Mr. Fulham.
Present.
All right, would everyone please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Any addition, item 1.3, any additions or deletions to the agenda?
I move to delete the executive session.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Mrs. Cahill, will you
Wait, who
please
was
call the
for-
roll to remove the executive session from the board
Okay,
agenda?
Mrs. Hagedorn, and who was the second?
Oh, Mr. Carpenter.
Tim, okay. Mrs. Hagedorn,
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter,
Aye.
Mr. Fulham,
Aye.
and Mr. Grant.
Aye, motion carried. May I have item 1.4, may I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Fulham.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Hagedorn. Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mr. Fulham,
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn,
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter,
Aye.
and Mr. Grant.
Aye. Motion carried.
Roll call.
Okay, okay, we're going to move over 1.5.
Did that.
Yeah, move.
We already did roll call.
Okay.
All right, moving on to section 2. We'll let Mr. Leeds come back. Let's see, he should be here soon. So we'll go to 2.1. If not, we'll come back to 2.1 when he gets here. 2.2 Butler Tech. I know Mr. Guido is not going to be present today, so we'll move on to 2.3 Finance.
We didn't have a meeting this month, so
Yep.
I think we're going to circle back.
Okay? And item 2.4, Student Achievement.
2.4. Okay, so I'd like to, for the high school, I'd like to give a congratulations to Ingrid Escalante for being recognized as commended student in the 2024 National Merit Scholarship Program. And Macy Miller was the student spotlight on the Tom and John show a few weeks ago. She's an aide from Mr. Napier, and she's helping other students in his class without being prompted. One example of Hornets making a difference. I'd also like to talk about Mrs. Thornton and the Environmental Club, how they're doing a fabulous job. In the first week of the Monroe Food Share Program, they had over 8 boxes of food donated. So they had to stop taking donations on Thursday and Friday of that week due to not having enough space to store all the food that was being donated. So that's a fabulous job. And the donations are going to a food bank. For the junior high, they inducted 35 eighth grade students into the National Junior Honor Society earlier in the month, which the inductees who were selected based on the values of scholarship, service, leadership, character, and citizenship. I'd like to recognize Landon Jones as an eighth grade student who sold 99 items for the school fundraiser, which is an outstanding job. He went above and beyond to earn funds to help support the student programs in the building. September Hornet of the Month was Mr. Langhier. Some of the comments that were made about him was, I nominate the staff member because he always makes choir fun. He's a fantastic teacher because he goes over songs multiple times with us and makes sure everyone is on pitch. We play Poison Patterns every day, and he's super competitive. And that he's a great choir teacher, puts a smile on my face when I enter the stage twice a day, every day. And I love singing. Choir has been helping me have a more stable voice and extend my vocal range. He makes my best friend smile every day. So those are just some of what the students have said about him to nominate him as September Hornet of the Month. Sorry, I'm struggling with that a little bit. The primary building had a successful fundraiser and raised over $20,000. Like, that's just amazing to me. That's a lot of money for the primary. And so I'd like to list some of the primary student of the months. Amelia Notch, Matthew Harris, Jesse Stom, Leo Watkins, Harley Wheeler, Arrow Schroeder, Kamaya Jones, Gissel Rude, Quinn Frederick, Avery Coleman, Greta Badenhop, Kayla Mason, Merrick Miller, Rosie Hagerman, Cadis Compen, Maria Kripe, Kingston McNee, Evelyn DePaul, Sawyer Cross, Jaden Tomas Vasquez, Adalyn Stapleton, Emmett Stacy, and Ava Hotz. So congratulations to those September Student of the Months. That's everything.
Good. Very good. All right. MEA.
That's just
All right, thank you. All right, moving on to 3.1, seeing that there are no comments from the public, we will move on to 3.2, Superintendent's Update. Mr. Buskirk.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. I want to start off just by recognizing it is homecoming week. Lots of activities for staff and students this week, Spirit Week, Jersey Night, Jersey Day, I should say. Thursday is the parade downtown. I believe they had the city council forum changed?
Yes,
That's
it was
good.
changed.
Is that
So there
official?
won't be.
It's officially changed. We don't know a new date yet.
Okay, good.
All right.
And then obviously Friday's the football game, followed by the dance on Saturday here at the high school. So lots of fun activities for our kids this week. State report cards came out, and I just wanted to give a brief overview tonight about that. Next month, Jody Long will be going in a little bit more in-depth, and she's going to be reporting with the principals a little bit about what each building is doing to, what we've added since the previous year and things that we're doing to address any areas of concern. So overall, very, very pleased with our report card. This is the first year, if you can see, a little star, 4.5 stars. This is our first year of stars, moving from the previous letter grades. But prior to, in between there was 3 years of no grade. Last year, they didn't give the star rating. They starred each individual area, but they didn't give an overall rating. Prior to that, there was no rating because of COVID, and then the year prior to that, there was no test because of COVID. So it goes back all the way to, I think, 18-19, which came out in the fall of 19. That was the actual last true report card where the district received a B. So the equivalent of 4.5 stars to a letter grade, I'm not sure, maybe A-, possibly, but we're 4.5 stars. So overall, I'm very pleased. We go to the next slide. There's a comparison of the county, and as you can see, we are towards the top at the county. Our staff, our students need to be very proud of their achievement. They've worked hard. If you see, I know that everybody wants to catch that. If you look down here, this kind of cut off, we have had a huge influx of English learning language students over the last 2 years. We've hired 2 additional TESOL teachers the last 2 years. Not that we're going to excuse away data. These are our kids, and we are going to work hard to help them improve. But as you look at our ratings, subgroups are a big component of our overall rating. And if you look at they have 12 ELL students for the entire district, as where we have almost 200. So that is a big difference. So, it's something that we'll continue to work at and look at, and we will continue to work. Next slide. that's kind of a comparison of Butler and Warren County, all the districts. If you look at that group in the yellow, all the 4.5 stars, those are some tremendous school districts, and we are right in the middle there, and that is something for our students and staff to be very proud of. A very, very good rating, very proud of everybody here. They've been working hard. And then the next slide, the other thing that comes out is a performance index. So the performance index is not just the percentage of kids that received the basic, that passed the proficiency, or the, not proficiency test, that dates me, passed the state assessments, but it's weighted. So if they pass, they get a certain amount of points. If they got advanced, they get more points. If they were just under, so it's a weighted system. If you look again, our performance index, that was my first year, but that was, those are based on the scores prior to me arriving. That was a COVID year. Everybody, across the state, everybody's scores dramatically dropped, but we have steadily made progress. We're definitely heading in the right direction. And then the last slide that I wanted to point out about this was, if you look, we are the blue line here. If you look at Monroe, Ross, Lakota, Talawanda, again, Butler County schools that we're, often compared to, we are, again, definitely heading in the right direction. I don't know why it has, that's 22 and a half and 23 and a half. I couldn't get it off my, off my spreadsheet, so anyway, but you can see that we are definitely heading up, and we are about a point behind Ross right there for being the top performance index in the county. So again, overall, I'm very excited for our staff and students, very proud of all the hard work, administration all the way down to everybody, really done a good job. So anybody have any questions about that?
No.
Okay.
No?
I just want to give a couple of updates. Mr. Leeds may share this as well. So we've all been waiting for ODE versus the department, the DO, the Department of Education and Workforce Development, the transition, and they haven't really given dates on when that all is going to happen. And everybody gets these mandates and they say details coming soon, but they're really not coming soon. Well, last week, towards the end of the week, the certain members of the State Board of Education are suing to reverse that decision, and so there is basically a cease and desist. So any transition was completely halted until October 7th. October 2nd is the first hearing. We heard that the governor actually was conducting second-round interviews for the, I believe it's the director of the DO. But they don't even know if that's going to be announced or where they are with that. So we are really on hold with ODE right now, so I just wanted to give you that update. And then on other positive news, ODE did release, I'm sure you all are aware of the lawsuit that happened in Bellbrook over levy procedures, and it was the first time that they actually brought criminal charges against the superintendent for misuse of public funds. And if you really dive into it, it was, there were some mistakes made, but, that raised everybody's antenna when there was criminal charges. It was actually, I believe, against the superintendent and the school board. Anyway, they've been asking ODE to release guidelines so they could follow it very closely. They finally released a 22-page guidance document on the do's and don'ts of levies. So fortunately for us, we haven't had to ask for new money since 2013. We don't see anything on the horizon in that area. Bond issue, we'll see down the road. So when we do get into that, I do think it's something that we definitely need to sit down with to go through to make sure we are doing things correctly. Exactly. And I think I took all your stuff, Mr. Leeds. Sorry. And then finally, I want to talk a little bit about the county tax increase that has been on everybody's mind. As you know, our county auditor came out in the newspaper and asked all the schools in Butler County just to not accept the tax increase, which makes no sense, to be honest, because it would have double negative effects on us. So I met with her, myself, and Jeff Staggs from Madison. We met with her and Mike Stein on Friday to talk about things. The thing that we tried to explain was that our state foundation money comes from, it's based on our local wealth. And as our local property taxes go up, that means our state foundation money would be, rolled back. And just if we say we're refusing it, that doesn't mean the state is going to say, oh, well, you're being good, we'll keep your money where it is. So she understood. She's not going to come out and say that, but she did understand. It was actually a very positive meeting, and she was very understandable to where we are coming from. With that being said, I had a BASA meeting today. There is 2 pieces of pending legislation on the tax increase. Actually, Thomas Hall was involved in both of them. And at first, when they were proposed, it was kind of heard that it was kind of dead in the water and they were not going anywhere. Well, they've got legs now, and they do believe both of them will pass, which will be a nice break for our local taxpayers. The first one is I'm not sure exactly what they're referring to it is, but is essentially if you are over age 70 and retired and have been living in your property for a certain number of years, it essentially will freeze your property taxes. So this huge increase will not affect them, which I think is a very positive thing for that population on fixed incomes. And so they do believe that some form of that is going to pass, which will be very good news. The previous 3-year average that they proposed that we did not think was going to happen, they do believe will happen. They think it's going to be a one-time 3-year average, and then they'll revisit it in 3 years to see if it still makes sense. But it buys some time and gives some relief to our local taxpayers. So we would still see an increase, but it would not be the 41% that was projected originally for Monroe Lemon Township. So that would be rolled back some over the 3-year average, which again would give all of everybody else a break. And I specifically asked the question, if they use that 3-year average, will they take that into account for the state foundation? And yes, so we wouldn't get hit both ways with the cutback and the state rollback. So I'm sure we will see some rollback with state foundation because that will be an increase in local taxes, but it's not going to double whammy.
It's not going to be substantial.
So, yes. With that being said, I've shared with the board already that I do think once we find out if this legislation goes through and what it's going to affect it's going to have on our local taxpayers, I do think we need to look at some things that we're doing, maybe with school fees, pay to play, to roll back that somewhat to give them an additional break. But we need to see what the long-term effect on that is. So, as I shared, I don't want to do anything that 2 or 3 years from now we say, whoops, we cut back too much, now we need to go to the taxpayers for operating money. So, but I do think it is going to be a significant increase for the local taxpayers, and we need to do our part as well. So,
Good.
any questions?
Nope. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Buskirk. Before we move on to Section 4, I'll go back to Section 2. Mr. Lee, is there anything from legislative you want to add?
The only other thing that I don't think Robert covered is there is a legislation that has been entered into the State House to whereby there will be restraints in school buses on all kids within 5 years.
I did hear that as well, but they do not believe that has much
Right.
much
Traction?
traction.
I mean, if it's that important, I would think that they'd do it before 5 years.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
But that's the only thing that's different than what he's talked about. Mine was on taxes, too.
All right, very good. Thank you, Mr. Leeds. Moving on to Section 4, Board President's Business. It is my pleasure to need a motion to approve employment and 3-year contract with Mrs. Amy Moore as the new treasurer to begin November 1st, 2023.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Fulham.
Second. Give it to Tom.
We'll give it to Tom. Mr. Leeds. All right. Mrs. Cahall, please call the roll.
Mr. Fulham,
Aye.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter,
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn,
Aye.
and Mr. Grant.
Aye. Motion carried. All right. Yes. Had to get the pen.
Got to get some pictures. And Mr. Grant's got to give his no nod. It's his favorite thing to do.
Do you want to get in this? We'll do one with and one. Yeah. All right. Let me get just a tad closer for me. Awesome. All right. 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3. All right, Robert, you want to jump in? Let me stand next to me. Yeah. You can change it up. All right, one more. 1, 2, 3. Thank you, guys.
Okay.
All right, now moving on to Section 5, Treasurer's Business. Mrs. Cahall.
I'm asking the board to approve the minutes from August 28th, 2023.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. Mrs. Cahall, please call the roll.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter,
Aye.
Mr. Fulham,
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn,
Aye.
and Mr. Grant.
Aye. Motion carried. Item 5.2.
I'm asking the board to approve the treasurer's financial report for August 31st, 2023.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Hagedorn.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Fulham.
Okay,
Mrs. Cahall, please call the roll.
okay, well, all right.
Oh,
Usually I say
apologize.
something, but
I apologize. I'm a little ahead of myself.
That's okay.
I wanted this drink really bad.
yeah, I guess you're right, I know.
I apologize. Go ahead with your
That's
treasurer's
okay.
report.
I really don't have, I mean, we were only 2 months into the year, and I did share with you a monthly financial report, which is prepared through Forecast 5. I mean, I can generate this report, but with 2 months of data, it's, to me, not that relative. You know, if our expenses are more this year than last year at this time, most of the time it's a timing issue. I just don't think there's enough data at this moment, and I really have been focusing on getting our budget in for the coming year and our expected resources too, which are the following reports. So I'll have a more detailed report for you next meeting. And also, and Tom had asked, and I'd already planned to share with you what this property tax, the change in property taxes and what that will mean for our foundation down the road. And I know, there's a calculation, I just haven't got to that. And I'll be honest, it was a hard week, right, Robert, last week, because our carpet was replaced. Okay, no excuses, but I'm just going to tell you. It's not easy working without a good printer and,
With all
but
your
anyway,
tolls.
Poor Tom, I gave him an earful, didn't I? But anyway, I'm going to get that information to you before the next board meeting as far as what the numbers look like for us and what it would do to our foundation, this change in property
Okay.
tax revenue, okay?
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? Okay, Mrs. Cahall, now you can call the roll.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
Mr. Fulham?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
And Mr. Grant.
Aye. Motion carried. Item 5.3.
Okay, I'm asking the board to approve the bond fund report for August 31st, 2023. And
May I
there-
have, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, there are no transactions, that's all I can say.
Gotcha.
Okay.
All right. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds.
And there were
Is
no
all the money where it's
transactions.
supposed to be?
Yes, it is. And I wondered if you wanted to continue this. I don't know, but it's up to you.
We will.
We'll probably
We
continue
will.
it.
We'll continue.
So that'll be a question that you will hear.
It's all the money where it should be, and it's 12 years in the making, that.
All right.
know,
Any
yeah.
questions? All right. Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mr. Fulham?
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
And Mr. Grant.
Aye. Motion carried. Item 5.4.
I'm asking the board to approve the administrative certificate of estimated resources for 2024.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Fulham.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Hagedorn.
Hagedorn? Okay.
Any questions on 5.4? Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mr. Fulham?
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
And Mr. Grant.
Aye. Motion carried. Item 5.5.
I'm asking the board to approve the permanent appropriations for fiscal year 2024.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds.
Leeds. Okay.
Any questions? Nope. Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mr. Fulham?
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
And Mr. Grant.
Aye. Motion carried. Item 5.6.
I'm asking the board to approve, well, it just accepted a payment of $80,000 from Kroger. It's an agreement we have based on a tax abatement.
I guess. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Fulham.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Hagedorn. Any questions?
The only question I have is this 80,000 is for the existing warehouse, right?
The back warehouse.
Yeah, but did they include the new one?
Yes, it's two of them. One is for $30,000 and one is for $50,000.
Okay, so the
difference in the
Bed
payments.
Bath & Beyond is included, that warehouse is included in?
Yes.
Is that the 30,000, the Bed Bath & Beyond facility?
I know, I think that's the $50,000, the Kroger's the 30.
Okay.
I mean, the robot.
The original
The
one.
distribution center, is that?
Yeah,
I think it's the other way around. That's okay.
Okay.
yeah.
That's good.
Any other questions? All right, Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mr. Fulham?
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
And Mr. Grant.
Aye. Motion carried. Item 5.7.
Okay, this is to accept a donation of $1,000 from Neediest Kids of All, and also setting up the fund to account for it.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds. Any questions on 5.7? Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mr. Fulham?
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
And Mr. Grant.
Aye. Motion carried. Thank you, Mrs. Cahill.
Thank you.
Moving on to Section 6, Superintendent's Personnel Business.
You want to block them?
Sure.
I recommend the board block section 6.1 through 6.4.
May I have a motion to block item 6.1 to 6.4?
So moved.
Second.
Oh, everyone's excited about that.
Let's go.
Who am I giving, who was the first one?
Mr. Leeds. Mrs. Hagedorn. No, that's definitely AJ.
All right, so we'll go Mr. Leeds. Mr. Leeds. And Mr. Fulham.
Thank you.
All right. All right.
Got you, buddy.
All right. First 6.1 is just a resignation. We had a substitute that was no longer working for us.
Oh, we
we gotta-
got to approve first. I
Oh, yeah.
apologize.
Oh, yeah. Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mr. Fulham?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
And Mr. Grant?
Aye, motion carried. All right, sorry, Mr. Busker.
No, you're fine. 6.1 is a resignation of a substitute in our cafeteria. A couple extracurricular contracts for junior high concert band and some athletics. Mr. Silverman is always keeping us busy with his athletics thing.
Yes.
Stipends for an extra prep. We did that last board meeting, but somehow we missed poor Cinda Pelfrey back there. Can't miss her. And then there was a correction. The step was incorrect on the last one, so we're correcting that.
Okay. Any questions on that? Anything from item 6.1 to 6.4? Okay. May I have a motion to approve item 6.1 to 6.4?
So moved.
Thank you,
Second.
Mrs. Hagedorn. Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. All right, Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mr. Fulham?
Aye.
And Mr. Grant?
Aye, motion carried. Moving on to section 7, superintendent's other business.
I would recommend that we block 7.1 through 7.8.
May I have a motion to approve, to block 7.1 to 7.8?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds. All right, Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mr. Fulham?
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
And Mr. Grant?
Aye, motion carried. All right.
All right, the first section is to accept donations, and as always, a lot of very, very generous people and organizations in the community. If you see the Monroe PTO, I wanted to point that, paid for the painting of the playground. I don't know if you've been out there, but it's awesome. I mean, it looks really good. I wish, had I been a kid that age, there's some fun stuff out there. So they did a really nice job. Mr. Ward and Mrs. Larison found somebody to do that. So. And as always, with his huge fun run, the PTO raises a ton of money for our kids, which is great. The collaboration for employment, that is it's a program for one of our special education students. Next is Fort Edge contract. That is for the cybersecurity program that we'll be using, and it is just a one-year contract. The reason we did a 1 year is because it's all kind of new, and lots of people, it's not new, but it's newer to us, and lots of people are now offering it to schools, so we're going with 1 year, and then we'll reevaluate next year to either continue with them or look at another vendor. Then the next two, we have a student at the Warren County Learning Center. One is for placement of the student there, and the other one is for a paraprofessional to work with a student with some severe behaviors there. Determination of impracticality of transportation. We do have two students that are homeless that are being transported from Hamilton to here. Parents have actually want to do that, and it's a lot less expensive than sending a transportation. Because of when they are homeless, we are responsible for transporting them. So, then the next two are trips. I know, Mrs. Hagedorn, I think you had a question about when they're going to start talking about it, and I believe they both are talking about it. I think the March date that you saw is just,
Yes.
That's when tryouts are, so they can't officially,
Okay.
they don't know who the teams are exactly until March, so that's why. But they've already, both of them are fundraising and talking about it with parents currently, so. And I think that's it.
Okay. Any questions on items 7.1 to 7.8?
I got a question on the transportation, Robert.
Yes, sir.
If we get into bad weather or something like that, and they or they have a breakdown or something, ask, if we can come and get the child, are we obligated to do that?
No, I think if it's a bad weather situation, it would be an excused absence. We do that for any of our kids. When it's inclement weather, when there's high school kids and parents call and say, I'm not sending my kid, in this weather, then keep them home. We'd rather you be safe.
Okay.
So it's an excused absence. So,
Okay.
yeah.
I have two things. Number one, On the donations, thank you to everyone. That is just real quick. That looks roughly about $40,000 worth of donations. So
Yep.
thank you to everyone in the community. And then on the Forward Edge, I believe we talked about, I just want to get clarification. The Forward Edge, that is, I know we approved something last month on the Forward Edge. This is something totally different than what we approved last
Correct.
month.
Last board meeting, that was the contract to provide our tech for the youth. Mr. right there, Logan Wave.
Okay.
That's who we approved last meeting, which we need. He's fantastic. So.
Okay, all right, very good. Any other questions? Okay. All right. And we already, let me just go back through. Oh, I need a motion to approve items 7.1 to 7.8.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Fulham. All right, Mrs. Kale, please call the roll.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mr. Fulham?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
And Mr. Grant?
Aye, motion carried. All right. So before we move to adjournment, we'll start with comments from the board. And we'll start with Mr. Leeds down there on the end.
First of all, I want to congratulate all administrators, staff, and students for their efforts in achieving the Monroe Local Schools 4.5 rating in the state report card. We were second highest in the county, tied with Talawanda. A job well done. It's a shame that the Journal News did not include Monroe in the reporting of this information from the state. We had a golden opportunity to thank people publicly. And I also want to highlight a new program in Monroe called the Monroe Food Share Program, which was started last month. Student-based effort to collect unused lunch food for a local food pantry. It is a program that is in conjunction with the JEE Foods, which is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to recycle unused food to the needy. Levi Grimm is the executive director of JEE Foods, and the program started 2018 at Butler Tech and Ross High School, and this year expanded to include the student-led food recovery here at Monroe. And you can read up on this program on their website at www.jeefoods.com, and they've got a lot of good things in there. But I talked to Brett today, and he says it's a fantastic deal, so congratulations to all who are participating. Good. That's all I have.
All right, Mr. Fulham.
It's time for the high fives from around the hive. Mr. Leeds stealing one of mine. That was pretty good.
He was watching your.
He was. He's typing this up over here. All right, high five to students and staff involved in the creation of the Monroe Food Share. This program collects unused lunch food that would otherwise end up in a trash can and redistributes it out to a local pantry to help families in need. High five to this year's homecoming court. This is one of my favorite times of the year as we get to celebrate with Spirit Week, the parade, football game, and of course the homecoming dance. Please be safe and make the very most of this special night with your friends. And finally, I want to extend a huge high five to our amazing community. We have a student and family facing some recent hardships, which prompted hundreds of people to rally and show support. It's who we are and what we do here in Hornet Country. So very proud of our community, as we always do come together when we need to. So that's all I got.
Very good.
Not 5 this time? I've been keeping it 3. I know. I've noted that.
I took his big one.
You did take my big one and expanded on it.
Took all the air out of his sails. It's all right, that happens.
Mr. Carpenter.
All right. First and foremost, I want to welcome Miss Amy Moore to the team. We're looking forward to you beginning, but I want to thank everybody who participated in the interviews and the, what's the word I'm looking for, like the groups? What is
Committee
that?
session?
Focus group.
Yeah, committee. There we go. Yeah, it's a good word. But again, just thank you everybody for your willingness to help out. It's much appreciated. And to all the kids, like, have a great homecoming. Be safe. Don't do anything stupid. That's what I've been telling Hazel. Don't do anything stupid. So hopefully she does nothing stupid, but we'll see. She's still a junior in high school, and they do stupid stuff, but that's okay. And then I don't know. I think that's about it.
That's it?
Yeah, I'll just go with that. Sure.
Sounds like a plan.
All right, Debbie, your turn.
Mrs.
All
Hagedorn.
right, so I'm going to repeat just a little, but I'll just skim over. I'd like to say, yeah, have a great homecoming week, and again, I like to say, have fun and make good decisions. So that's what I've always
like the
said.
nice
Have
mom
fun
way of
and make
saying
good
it.
That's the mom way.
decisions.
This is the dad way of saying
The
it.
dad way, the mom way. Let's make good decisions. So be safe and make good decisions. I'm very excited for Monroe to get the 4.5 stars. That's awesome, moving in the right direction, and I think 5.0 stars is soon in our horizon. So we're going to keep moving that way. I'd like to welcome Ms. Moore to the team. We're very excited. So just kind of welcome. I'd also like to mention, if anybody was at the football game on Friday night, the band, and how all those students, like on the drop of a dime within 30 seconds, had to cut their show short and then get in front of the student section and do their last song. It was a fabulous experience, and I think the band enjoyed it, the student section enjoyed it, and a lot of the community members have reached out and really enjoyed it. So.
It's my recommendation they do that every game. That was
And
awesome.
that has been heard. So to get, I think there's like 80 students in the band to like change the plan at the drop of a hat was really it was pretty awesome to see that. The high school students at Monroe are just amazing and very flexible, and that just worked out to be a good job. So just kind of wanted to mention that. That's all I have for today.
All right, very good. I'll just echo, again, I always echo what everything goes on. So welcome again to Monroe. We're glad to have you in Hornet Country. And to what AJ said in regards to the family in need, I've said it for years. The 21 years I've been here, that's what makes Monroe a special place. It takes a village, and that's one thing I love about this community and this district, is if someone needs something, the community will rally. So I do love homecoming week, so make good decisions at homecoming, and I'm looking forward to a fantastic week for everyone. All right. Other than that is it for me. Okay, so with that being said, I accidentally, moving on to section 9.1. What? No day. It is, hey, look at that. We could sit here and talk for a little while. What time's the kickoff?
What time is kickoff?
8:15, 8:20 to be exact.
I mean, that's a long time.
All right, may I have a motion to adjourn the meeting at 9:41?
9?
Wait,
6:41.
Sir, it's only 6:41.
I was thinking
What is
halftime.
happening? What is
Oh my
happening?
goodness, we're really going to be here for a long time.
I'm so glad we've already approved our next treasurer.
6:41.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter.
Second.
Third.
Thank you, Mrs. Hagedorn. All right, Mrs. Cahall, please call the roll.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mr. Fulham?
Aye.
And Mr. Grant?
Aye. And for the record, I don't root against them except for 2 times a year, so good luck to all your guys, Bengals.
That's not on the record. We adjourned.
And we adjourn.
Yeah.
I do want to share, Peterman is doing their annual cookout for employees before the game.